Hey guys, welcome back to another video with me. On today's tutorial on how I make our caramel and butter popcorn candle. I already started creating our jar candle off of screen just because I didn't want to give away my hidden jewel on how I create my jars for the candle. Also, I decided in this video to add some fun clips down at the bottom of the screen as well out through the video. I want to start today by showing you guys the mode and also how our candle is supposed to look, also how the kernels are supposed to come out. First things first, we're going to start by getting us some wax. Once you have your wax, you want to set it to the side for a second. Then you want to grab your fragrance. The fragrance that I'm using today is caramel corn. You want to go ahead and add that to your mixture, and then you want to stir it. The dye color that I used for this candle was called Garnet. Now that your mixture is ready, you want to start your jar. You want to grab your jar and grab wick. You want to grab 2 wicks in this case to make sure that you get a full thorough burn throughout the candle. Depending on what type of wick you use, in my case I'm using soy string wicks. So in this case I'm going to use stickers. This was in the beginning of my journey, one of the first candles that I made before I elevated my knowledge. So I was using sticker dots. So if you ever had to use sticker dots, you know you just peel it off, stick it to the bottom of your wick as you can see me do here, and then you'll place your wick in the sticker and push down on the inside of your jar. When doing this, you want to make sure that the sticker is placed in fully secure, so you want to push as hard as possible and make sure that it's sticking without coming up. Now, being a pro candle maker and being well advanced, I recommend, if you're new or just starting your journey on making candles, or even if you just do it for fun, to invest in a wick setter, as these run sometimes from $95 to $119. You can easily find them on Amazon. Now that both of your wicks are set, your jar is ready, but before you start pouring, you want to secure your wick. So you're going to get a wick setter. I have a metal wick setter. What you do is you stick both of your wicks through the holes and bring it all the way down and rest it across your jar. as this holds your wick in place during the pouring process and while it's setting. This causes your candle to burn properly and not improperly. It prevents holes or any improper burning. As you guys can see here, my wick did come out of place, as I did mention before. When using sticker dots, this can happen. I recommend, if you're a beginner, to use gel dots prior to that, or just stay away from these type of wicks altogether. They do have wooden wicks as well. Now we are almost halfway through our candle. Now that our wick is set to our jar and we have our wick setter in placement, it's time to pour our mixture. You want to stir it before you start to pour. Once you're done pouring, you want to go ahead and pour your mixture halfway through, a little bit above halfway through, not all the way to the top, but not too low, as you do want to leave space so that way we can do our caramel popcorn kernels on top. Now that we have our popcorn candle filled up more than halfway through, believe it or not, we are halfway done with the candle. The candle is almost finished. We just have one last step, which is creating our caramel popcorn kernels. Just to give you guys a brief idea of what our kernels should look like when it's done. So to create this look, you will have to use a mold. This is a popcorn kernel mold that I did get. I had to pre-order it offline. Once you have your fresh jar of wax, you then want to get your oil or fragrance and you want to add it to your fresh wax. Go ahead and start mixing your wax and fragrance, and be careful not to create air bubbles. Now that you have mixed your mixture, it's time to take your fragrance and wax and go ahead and fill up our mold. You want to be careful and make sure that you get into the holes of the mold, as this is going to play a big part in shaping your popcorn kernels. Once you fill up your mold, it is a little process. I am going to speed up the video a little bit through this process, but you do have to wait for it to set. During this speed up, you will notice that the mold will start to fairly turn white, and that's what we want. That means that our kernels are definitely forming and shaping. This next clip, excuse me guys, right here in this next clip, Robin decided to wake up and he just wanted to say hello to chat.
Yes, so do you guys have any questions for me? Anyone that's new?
Here you guys can see what I mean by that mold turning white. That's a good sign. That lets us know that it's almost ready for us to get ready to reveal. First thing you want to do is you want to check to make sure that your kernels are not mushy. In this case, they weren't. They were fully ready to go, so I started revealing our kernels. If for some reason during this process you notice that your kernels are still wet or mushy or forming, you don't really have to do nothing but just sit and wait a little longer for it to set and then reveal. Fun fact, here you guys will see me lift my jar. You do not want to lift your jar. You want to let it fully set. You don't want to move your jar at all in its setting process. In this case, I was live when I did this recording, so in order for chat to see what was going on or to understand what I was explaining, I had to lift up the jar. But again, you do not want to lift up the jar. But thanks a lot that my equipment is way more advanced now, so I wouldn't have that problem in the future. But just in case anyone is a beginner or is just starting their journey and you may not have the proper equipment, you just want to keep in mind with moving your jar in its setting process. As moving your jar in its setting process can cause to improper burning due to air bubbles or holes. Have you ever had a candle with a gap or a hole or even a dent? That is probably why. Due to heating, moving, wrong temperature, or just dipping. It's called frosting. Now that we have revealed our kernel, I'm gonna fill up for some more wax, being that we have to make a second batch just in case, depending on how many candles. You want to make sure that you have enough to where your candle looks full, not overloaded but full. So in this case we will have to make a second batch. It's better to have more than to have less or not enough, as we don't want to cheat our customers and we don't want to have to stretch our candle. Some will ask, well, if I have more, wouldn't I have too much product? Never be afraid of having too much product. Always have an extra storage area to store extra products, because you never know when you can melt it down or reuse it. That saves your money, your time, and your product. Now that we have our second batch of mixture, we want to go ahead and stir it. Once you're done stirring, you want to go ahead and repeat the same process as before. You want to fill up your mold and make sure that you get every kernel filled up to the top as complete as possible, as this shapes and form each one of your kernels. I wanted to take the time to show you guys how our jar looks. It is almost about done setting. While we're waiting for this to finish setting, I want to go ahead and show you on our first batch of caramel popcorn on how to create the caramel kernels. I found that this part is the most crucial part to make the candle look its most realistic. It's the most talked about part of the candle. It's the part of the candle that everyone seems to fall in love with, that makes that loving smell that everyone seems to just die for come to life. You're gonna want to start by grabbing your first batch of popcorn kernels, and you want to grab either a chopping board or something you can lay your kernels on top of. Once you have all your popcorn kernels placed, you want to go ahead then and get some fresh wax, and you want to grab your garnet coloring. You want to drop about, I want to say, 10 to 20 dots of dye, and you want to stir it. again, stir and make sure there's no air bubbles whatsoever. Once you are done with that step, you want to go ahead and make sure you have something that's fine, like a dropper. In this case, you'll see me heat up my dropper. Once I heat up my dropper, you would then see me start to squeeze enough to fill my dropper up, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just slightly start dripping randomly around my popcorn kernels. Mind you, when I added fragrance to my mixture before I made my popcorn kernels, so yes, they are white, but they do still smell like caramel. And then when I went ahead and made my coloring for the caramel on the caramel popcorn, I had added fragrance too. So you don't need a lot of fragrance when you're adding it to the caramel part because you already used it for the actual caramels. Fun fact, too much oil will cause your candle also to not burn properly, or it will burn properly, but then it would die out your smell. Some people have this problem where their candles burn, but you can't really smell the candle too well, and that's because they overpower their wick with too much fragrance. Here I was showing you guys our jar, letting you know that it had set. But I did a check. You always want to check your jar because my jar had some air bubbles and some dipping. I'm glad that I caught it before I started placing our kernels, because all you have to do in that place is add a heating gun on low, as low as you can get your heating gun, and you want to go over the top part until the bubble smooths out and it's even. The wax that melts on top will then seal that hole and seek into that hole, and it will close up your candle, which will allow your candle to burn properly. So while I set my jar to the side to wait for it to reset again, I'm just gonna start doing the same steps on the last caramel popcorns on this popcorn. Just gonna add the coloring to our caramel popcorn. So here I had checked our big jar and it wasn't quite ready yet. So I was gonna show you guys how to fill it up later in the video, but just to kill some time, I decided to take one of our butter popcorn, our smalls, and show you since it was set already and I have the kernels already to the side, and just show you how to go ahead and start our process of making our popcorn candle. So with this particular candle, it's a little different because you have two different color popcorns. So you have the white kernels and you have the yellow kernels because this is a butter popcorn. As the yellow plays a part for your butter and the white plays a part for your actual popcorn. With this candle, because it's two-tone, you want to put your kernels in placement to where both are showing evenly or just enough to where you can get that buttery popcorn effect. Also, make sure you rotate your candle around when placing them to make sure that your kernels look good from every angle around the candle, including in between both wicks and around your wicks. Once you are secure with your placement of your popcorn kernels, you're going to take your heat gun and you're going to, on low heat, lightly go around, and you want to apply heat to your kernels. Not enough to melt them completely down, not enough to lose its shape, but enough to make it glossy and make them stick to one another. Sometimes you may have to use your fingers to play around, and you may have to hold them together, and you might have to add a little bit more heat. But remember, not enough to bleed your color, not enough to lose your shape, but enough to where it's wet enough to stick to one another, so that way when it sets, it hardens. When done, and when your candle is done setting, you will know if you did it right or not by doing a test. How do you test it? You will take your candle and you will tilt it upside down. If a caramel popcorn falls from your candle, it is not correct. You repeat those steps and let it reset. Now that I checked our jar to make sure that it was fully ready, it was. Now what do you want to do? You want to take your heat gun and you want to apply a little bit of heat, just enough to make it wet and glossy around the top part of your candle. Once you have that, you want to go ahead and start sticking your caramel pieces in place. You want to start with creating the border. So work your way from the bottom up. Don't just take a handful and drop them in there and think that you're going to get the most realistic and full look. No, take your time and really find the placement of your candle. You want to go ahead again, just like the little candle, and you want to add a little bit of heat around, enough to make it glossy. Once it's glossy, you go ahead and you start on your next layer. You go up until you can't go no more, or until your candle looks its best and fullest. Again, once you have your placement, you want to check both sides or all sides of your candle to make sure it looks good on each side. If something looks off, you want to adjustment. This will be the perfect time before adding heat, as this is the final step and it would harden and solidify. Now is also the good time to make sure that you're happy with how your caramel pieces look and your caramel placement. If you feel like caramel needs to be added in some places and some places are a little too white, you go ahead and use your dropper, you go ahead and drop and let it dry again. If you're happy with how everything came out and how everything looked, your placement and everything as well, then you want to go ahead and get ready to start setting it. You want to grab your heat gun and you want to lightly, again on low heat or medium for the larger jar, you want to go ahead and apply heat a little bit around, not enough to bleed your color and not enough to lose your shape of your candle, but just enough to where it's glossy and wet enough to where it would set and harden. As you guys see here, I got too excited with our little one and I shook it and everything came out. it did not pass our shake test. So now I have to repeat those steps over again and then let it sit longer until it's fully set. If your caramel popcorn are coming out of the popcorn itself, or if they're falling out off when you tilt it, the candle is not ready and you need to wait longer. It's an easy fix. Just reheat the base of the candle and then go ahead and apply your cardinals again, and then go ahead and apply some heat and then let it sit to the side to set. Now we are applying those same methods to our bigger candle, as this is the last step of our candle. Here, as you can see, I felt my candle was a little too on the lighter side, so I went and added some more of our garnet color in the dropper over our candle before completely setting it. As you guys can see in the background, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I do keep a storage area of all my things close by me, especially when streaming. It's easier to get to and from to show you guys, but any extra wax and stuff I do keep over in this area, as this also gives me the ability to stay organized, being that I have children and I work from home. That way I can keep personal and business in our space separate. And when done, this is how our candle look. This is the final look. Now, once our candle is set and we're positive everything is right, we want to go in by clipping our wick. You don't want to clip too far down, but you want to clip enough. And then the excess leftover wick, you want to curl it. I found that when curling your wick, it makes your candle look not only more realistic, but it makes you look more professional. So curling your wick is a method that you should do. I found for marketing reason and for sales, customers tend to gravitate towards a curled wick candle more than a candle that just has a wick sticking out of it. And here you can see the difference between a regular just sticking up wick and a curled wick. As a curl wick can help with the illusion of the candle being realistic, but also, if in my case, if you are a seller or you are a candle maker and you have your own logos, you can easily create your logos on top of or tag your candles. Here you will see me add my logo and tag to the candle. And boom, there you have it, our final look to our caramel popcorn candle. Thank you guys for watching this video with me. If you haven't, please subscribe. Any comments or questions, please feel free to comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.